In the frozen dawn of June 1694, 40,000 Crimean Tatar warriors descend upon a fortified church in southeastern Poland. They command the steppe. For centuries, their lightning raids have paralyzed entire kingdoms. Behind them stretches a trail of burned villages and emptied towns. Their horsemen move like a dark tide across the landscape, seemingly unstoppable, carrying the weight of empire and the momentum of conquest. They expect no resistance, only plunder and submission. But at Hodów, beneath gray morning skies, 400 Polish Hussars stand behind earthwork walls. The Tatars advance. The defenders do not retreat. For 3 days, waves of thousands crash against those walls. None break through. This was the Battle of Hodów. But to understand Hodów, you must first understand one simple question. What happens when an army built for speed meets a defense designed for absolute immobility? The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1694 occupies the unstable borderland between empires. To the south and east lies the Ottoman sphere, a constellation of vassal states and allied khanates that extend Ottoman influence without direct occupation. The Crimean Khanate serves as the Sultan's sword arm, its warriors the shock troops of expansion. For the Tatars, raiding is not simply warfare, it is economy, identity, survival. The steppe cavalry excels at speed and range. They strike deep into enemy territory, seize livestock and captives, and vanish before organized resistance can form. The slave markets of Crimea and Constantinople fuel this system. Each raid feeds the next. Each successful campaign validates the strategy. The Commonwealth understands this cycle intimately. For generations, Polish and Lithuanian lands have endured these incursions. Entire regions depopulate. Fortresses stand isolated. Traditional field armies prove ineffective. By the time they mobilize, the raiders have already withdrawn. The Tatars do not conquer territory. They bleed it, but the Poles have adapted. The Hussaria, the winged Hussars, represent Poland's answer to the steppe. These heavy cavalry combine the shock power of Western knights with the discipline of professional soldiers. Their distinctive wings, attached to the saddle or armor, create psychological impact and produce an unnerving sound in the charge. Yet, at Hodów, they will not charge. They will defend. The fortified church at Hodów sits in Red Ruthenia, modern-day Western Ukraine, along one of the traditional Tatar raiding routes. It is not a grand fortress, but a modest structure reinforced with earthworks and wooden palisades. In times of danger, local populations take refuge within such strongpoints. They are designed to endure. In spring 1694, Khan Safagarey assembles a massive force. The target: Polish territory weakened by ongoing conflicts with the Ottomans. The objective: a grand razzia, a sweeping raid to gather captives, livestock, and wealth. Intelligence suggests minimal opposition. The Commonwealth's main armies are engaged elsewhere. The moment appears ideal, but Crown Field Hetman Stanisław Jabłonowski has positioned troops strategically. Among them, a regiment of Hussars under the command of Jan Karol Sapieha. When reports arrive of the Tatar advance, Sapieha makes a calculated decision. Rather than attempt to intercept a force 100 times his size in open terrain, he will occupy Hodów. He will transform mobility into fortification. He will force the Tatars to fight the one kind of battle they cannot win. Khan Safagarey does not expect a battle. He expects the continuation of a proven pattern: advance rapidly, overwhelm isolated resistance, seize objectives, withdraw before major forces can respond. His 40,000 warriors include the elite cavalry of the Crimean Khanate, supplemented by auxiliary forces from allied tribes and Ottoman territories. They carry composite bows, sabers, and lances. They know the land. They have done this before. The Khan's strategy depends on momentum. A fortified position with a small garrison presents a choice: bypass it and continue the raid, or reduce it quickly and move forward. Hodów seems insignificant. 400 men behind improvised walls should not delay an army of 40,000. But Jan Karol Sapieha knows his enemy intimately. He knows the Tatars excel in fluid warfare, skirmishing, archery duels, encirclement on open ground. He knows they lack siege artillery and have limited patience for sustained assaults. He knows their strength becomes weakness when forced to attack a prepared defense. Sapieha also knows his Hussars. These are not raw recruits, but veteran cavalrymen, nobles and retainers bound by loyalty and honor. Dismounted, they retain discipline and firepower. The fortified church offers natural advantages. Stone walls provide cover. Earthworks extend the perimeter. Supplies have been stockpiled for a siege. The tactical calculation is clear. In open combat, 400 against 40,000 is annihilation. Behind walls with prepared fields of fire and limited approaches, the mathematics change. The Tatars must funnel into killing zones. Their numbers become a liability. Too many warriors for the available attack routes, creating congestion and confusion. Sapieha commits fully. He orders the Hussars into Hodów. They bring muskets, powder, provisions, and determination. They strengthen the defenses. They establish clear fields of observation. They prepare for close quarters fighting. They do not expect relief. They expect to survive until the enemy abandons the assault, and that quiet decision leads directly to the Battle of Hodów. The Crimean host moves like a migration. 40,000 horsemen flow across the landscape in loose formations, organized by clan and allegiance. The sound is thunder made continuous. Hoofbeats, the creak of leather, the jangle of equipment, the calls of commanders maintaining cohesion. Banners mark the positions of nobles and officers. Auxiliary troops drive livestock seized from earlier raids. Captives march under guard, destined for distant markets. Khan's Sefagire rides with confidence earned through experience. The route is familiar. The opposition is scattered. The Commonwealth's armies are committed elsewhere. This incursion should proceed like others: swift penetration, maximum extraction, rapid withdrawal. The fortified church at Hodów appears as a minor obstacle, a delay, not a threat. As the vanguard approaches, scouts report the garrison's presence. 400 Hussars. The Khan calculates quickly. To bypass Hodów leaves an intact force at his rear, capable of harassing his withdrawal. To reduce it should require minimal time. 400 men cannot withstand 40,000 indefinitely. He orders the assault. The Tatar formations compress as they approach the fortified position. The terrain channels movement, marshland to one side, elevated ground to the other. The approaches to Hodów narrow. What appears as merely difficult ground becomes something more constrictive. But the Khan sees logistics, not vulnerability. The attack will proceed. Sapieha studies the terrain with the eyes of a defender. Every slight elevation matters. Every natural obstacle becomes part of the defense. The fortified church sits on modest high ground, providing observation and making assault more difficult. The approaches are limited. Attackers must advance across open ground, exposed to defensive fire. The Hussars transform the position methodically. They deepen earthworks, creating ramparts that provide cover and establish clear firing positions. They reinforce the palisades with earth and timber. They clear fields of fire, removing obstacles that might provide cover to attackers. They position their firearms, muskets, and small artillery pieces to create overlapping zones of fire. Inside the perimeter, supplies are organized for sustained defense. Powder and shot are distributed to firing positions. Water barrels are filled. Medical supplies are prepared, weapons are inspected and maintained. Every hussar understands his role and position. The tactical plan is deceptively simple. Force the attackers into narrow approaches, maximize firepower at close range, maintain discipline under pressure. The hussars will not sortie, they will not pursue. They will hold the walls until the enemy withdraws or exhaustion makes defense impossible. At the highest points, marksmen position themselves to target enemy commanders and create initial casualties. Below them, the main firing line prepares to deliver massed volleys into advancing formations. At the walls themselves, soldiers ready for hand-to-hand combat should the Tatars breach the outer defenses. Above them, the defenders wait. They know that once the Tatars commit to assault, the mathematics of confined space will work against superior numbers. June 11th, 1694. Dawn breaks cold and gray. The Tatar army surrounds Hodów completely. The Khan's commanders assess the defenses and organize the first assault waves. They see earthworks and palisades, formidable but not insurmountable. They see a small garrison, outnumbered 100 to 1. They see an obstacle to be eliminated quickly. The first waves advance on horseback, expecting to overrun the position through sheer momentum and numbers. Thousands of mounted warriors move forward, raising dust, shouting war cries, creating the psychological weight of an unstoppable force. This is the Tatar way: speed, aggression, overwhelming presence. The defenders watch silently. Sapieha's orders are absolute. Hold fire until maximum effect. Let them close. Let them commit. The hussars remain motionless behind the ramparts, weapons ready, discipline absolute. The Tatars see the fortifications. They see the defenders. They see 400 men facing 40,000. Only then does the defense begin. The first volley erupts from the ramparts like sudden thunder. Musket fire crashes into the advancing horsemen at close range. Horses collapse, throwing riders. Warriors pitch from saddles. The neat advance disintegrates into chaos within seconds. Those behind cannot stop. Momentum carries them forward into the killing zone. A second volley follows, then a third. The hussars fire in rotation, maintaining continuous fire, reloading with practiced efficiency. The narrow approaches amplify the carnage. Dead horses block the path. Wounded animals thrash in panic. The attack compresses into a tangled mass. The Tatar warriors attempt to return fire with their bows, but the earthworks provide too much cover. Their arrows strike earth and timber. The defenders remain protected. The attackers remain exposed. The first assault breaks. Warriors withdraw in disorder, leaving dozens dead and wounded. The speed that defines Tatar warfare becomes a liability. There is no room to maneuver, no space to execute their traditional tactics. The fortified church has become a meat grinder. The Khan watches the first assault fail and orders a second, then a third. The pattern repeats with variations: dismounted attacks to reduce target profiles, attempts to overwhelm specific sections of the perimeter, archery bombardments to suppress defensive fire. Nothing succeeds. Each assault follows the same trajectory. Warriors advance across open ground, channeled by terrain into narrow approaches. Defensive fire erupts at close range. Men fall. Confusion spreads. The attack collapses. The survivors withdraw. The confined space creates cascading problems. Warriors try to charge the walls. There is no room. They attempt to concentrate their forces. Concentrated forces become concentrated targets. They seek to use their archery advantage. The earthworks negate range and accuracy. Individual moments illustrate the larger chaos. A group of warriors reaches the palisade and attempts to tear down the wooden barriers. Musket fire from above cuts them down. Another group tries to set fire to the defenses. Defenders extinguish the flames and shoot the arsonists. Tatar commanders attempt to organize coordinated assaults from multiple directions simultaneously. The defenders shift forces internally, concentrating firepower wherever the pressure increases. The sound becomes constant. Gunfire, shouting, the screams of wounded horses, the crash of failed assaults against timber and earth. Smoke hangs over the battlefield. The ground before the walls becomes carpeted with bodies and abandoned equipment. The Tatars, accustomed to fluid warfare where retreat is always an option, find themselves trapped in a static grind that favors neither their skills nor their numbers. Inside the fortifications, the Hussars maintain iron discipline. They fire, reload, fire again. They drink water between volleys. They replace damaged weapons. When ammunition runs low in one section, they redistribute supplies. When exhaustion threatens, soldiers rotate positions. Sapieha moves among them, directing fire, encouraging resistance, maintaining morale. On the second day, the pattern continues. The Tatars cannot abandon the siege. Doing so would represent humiliating failure and leave an intact enemy force capable of harassing their retreat. But neither can they break through. Each assault costs lives without gaining ground. The mathematics of attrition work against the attackers. 400 defenders with adequate supplies and strong positions can repel thousands. The third day brings desperation. The Khan orders mass assaults, waves of warriors attacking simultaneously, attempting to overwhelm the defenses through sheer weight of numbers. The defenders respond with concentrated fire, creating walls of lead at point-blank range. The Hussars hold. By the third evening, Khan Safa-Giray accepts reality. His army has lost thousands of warriors, killed, wounded, or demoralized. The garrison remains intact and defiant. The broader raid has stalled. Time favors the Commonwealth. Reinforcements might arrive, or the Tatar army might find itself trapped between multiple Polish forces. The decision to continue becomes untenable. On June 14th, the Tatar army withdraws. There is no organized disengagement, simply a gradual pulling back, a dissipation of the siege as warriors and commanders recognize the futility of further assault. The great host that approached with confidence 3 days earlier departs in frustration and disorder. The ground before Hodów tells the story. Abandoned weapons lie scattered, bows, arrows, lances, shields. Dead horses rot in the morning sun. The narrow approaches that channeled the attacks are marked by the evidence of repeated failures. Blood darkens the earth. Equipment stripped from the dead reflects the scale of Tatar casualties, estimated at several thousand, though precise numbers remain unknown. Inside the fortifications, exhaustion replaces adrenaline. The Hussars emerge from behind their walls to survey the battlefield. They count their own losses, remarkably light given the ferocity of the assaults. The prepared defenses, disciplined fire, and strategic positioning have worked exactly as Sapieha calculated. The defenders do not pursue. They remain on the heights. Their objective has already been achieved. 400 men have stopped 40,000. The Tatar raid has been disrupted. The psychological impact will resonate far beyond this single engagement. The siege of Hodów lasted 70 hours. In that span, a numerically insignificant force demonstrated that the Crimean Tatars' raiding strategy contained a fundamental vulnerability. When forced into static warfare against prepared defenses, superior numbers meant nothing. News of Hodów spreads rapidly through the Commonwealth and beyond. In Warsaw and Krakow, the defense is celebrated as validation of Polish military doctrine. The Hussars, already legendary for their cavalry charges, have now proven equally formidable in defensive operations. Sapieha becomes a hero, his tactical acumen praised in court and camp. For the Crimean Khanate, Hodów represents more than a failed raid. It exposes a strategic limitation. The Tatar military system, optimized for mobility and speed, lacks the capability to reduce fortified positions efficiently. Future raids must consider this vulnerability. Polish defensive networks of fortified churches, castles, and strongpoints become more formidable obstacles. The broader impact extends to Ottoman strategic planning. The Sublime Porte relies on the Crimean Tatars to apply pressure on Commonwealth borders, diverting Polish-Lithuanian military resources. Hodów demonstrates that this strategy has limits. The Commonwealth can defend effectively even when outnumbered catastrophically. The psychological deterrent of overwhelming numbers no longer guarantees success. Within Poland-Lithuania, Hodów reinforces the value of defensive infrastructure. Investment in fortifications increases. Communities organize defense plans around strong points. The concept of mobile defense, using cavalry to reach threatened positions rapidly, then defending from prepared positions, becomes doctrine. For military theorists across Europe, Hodów offers lessons about the relationship between technology, tactics, and terrain. Firearms behind earthworks, wielded by disciplined soldiers, can defeat vastly superior numbers of attackers armed with traditional weapons. The battle prefigures the declining effectiveness of cavalry charges against prepared infantry positions, a trend that will define warfare for the next 2 centuries. The engagement also affects the diplomatic landscape. The Commonwealth negotiates from a stronger position in ongoing conflicts with the Ottomans. The perception of Polish military weakness, encouraged by territorial losses and internal political divisions, is challenged by events like Hodów. Small but significant victories accumulate into strategic credibility. For the soldiers who fought at Hodów, the battle becomes a defining moment. Veterans recount the 3-day siege as proof that discipline, preparation, and intelligent leadership can overcome seemingly impossible odds. The story passes into regimental tradition, repeated to new generations of Hussars, as an example of what is possible when courage meets calculation. Today, the site of Hodów returns to ordinary landscape. Fields grow where warriors once fought. The fortified church stands modified by time, its walls no longer marked by musket balls and arrow strikes. The physical evidence of the battle has faded, but the principles demonstrated remain sharp. Hodów is remembered not for the specific numbers or the particular commanders, but for what it proves, that defensive advantage can multiply effectiveness exponentially, that discipline under pressure determines outcomes more than raw strength, and that intelligent use of terrain and preparation can neutralize massive numerical superiority. The battle teaches that warfare is mathematics, not the simple mathematics of counting soldiers, but the complex calculus of position, morale, supply, and tactical advantage. 400 disciplined defenders in a strong position are worth more than 40,000 attackers forced into a disadvantageous engagement. It teaches that strategy includes knowing when not to fight conventionally. Sapieha's genius was not in courage. Courage was abundant on both sides, but in recognizing that accepting battle on the enemy's terms guaranteed defeat, while forcing battle on his own terms made victory possible. It teaches that technology and training matter. The Hussars' firearms, earthworks, and professional discipline created a synergy that exceeded the sum of individual capabilities. The Tatars possessed individual skill and vast experience, but lacked the tools and doctrine for siege warfare. Hodów is not the story of a miraculous victory against impossible odds. It is the story of calculated defense executed flawlessly, proving that intelligence, preparation, and discipline can defeat even overwhelming force. And that is why it still matters.